Hello, everybody, and welcome to AI People. Today, we're talking to Sumanyu Sharma, who is the CEO at Hamming AI, which is a testing and production monitoring platform for AI voice agents. Welcome, Sumanyu.
Thanks for having me.
So we always kick off the podcast by asking you to make a few predictions about the AI industry as a whole. So the first one is, how do you see humans and AI collaborating with regard to work in 5 years' time and in 15 years' time?
Ooh, that's starting with a with a soft question. What's prediction? I think my take is, at least if I think about our company and the way we build products or the way we think about just any parts of the business, we're very AI native in general. And AI native means truly understanding the skills and weaknesses of the toolings that are available. What is Cursor, good at, or like what have they done truly exceptional? What is Cloud Code good at? What is Codex really good at from a code gen standpoint, and using these tools almost like peers, and being very, very good, having a very good mental model of what is, Devonable, for example, if for folks who are using Devon, or what is Codexable, or what is Cloud Codable. And I think that skill set becomes very important for humans, because humans become orchestrators and largely decision makers of what's the right way to build, what is the thing we should be building that drives the most value for customers. And a lot of the implementation details, I think more and more you can rely on these AI tools to help, ship for you. But the strategic decision-making creativity, that really relies with the humans. So I personally see collaboration as really the number one thing for teams who will end up winning. And I think teams who are adversarial to adopting these technologies will end up losing in a pretty massive way. Already I see many of my peers out of YC who are AI native and really embrace these toolings and accept them with their flaws, are able to outship teams that are, twice their size or 3 times our size. So you can really build a lot of value. You can build a lot of products and features and get a lot of stuff done with fewer people than you kind of were doing before with this telephone game. When you're sort of having a huge team they have to coordinate. And so I think leverage is the key, unlock that I see. And so there will be a big divide. There will be a big divide between teams that are risk on and teams that are risk off and sort of skeptical or like worried. You should just embrace it and become good at collaborating. That's my prediction / internal monologue that we have, at Hamming and how we see the world.
Okay, and in terms of the kind of AGI question, put your own kind of definition on that. Do you think it's something we're getting close to, or still the kind of perennial 20 years away?
I feel like to some extent AGI is already here. At least we feel the AGI in its early essence. I think the reasoning models are becoming quite good, where sometimes the analysis, well, maybe not sometimes, a lot of the times, maybe the majority of the times, when we're having a Opus or a 2.5 Gemini Pro or a Codex model analyze pieces, it tends to have a better understanding than even we do. Not always, not all the time, but many times. So it's kind of like AGI is a super vague kind of word. And I think it's task specific, and there's specific tasks where LLMs are super good in their current shape. And in some others, they're not quite there. So there's an uneven distribution between what they're good at, what they're not good at. I'll kind of tie it back to our company. So we test voice agents, and I can tell you AGI is almost here for voice agents, where the ones we're testing, the voice agents we're testing, are generally getting really, really good over time. And they're indistinguishable sometimes to how other humans, for example, might be, behaving on calls, and are more sometimes are most standardized, maybe more polite. They don't get
Yeah,
rattled
yeah.
as quickly if someone is yelling at them. They're like, well, okay, yeah, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
sometimes not. Sometimes they fail in all kinds of different ways. And so I feel like AGI is already here, and you just have to look deeply at specific problems where massive disruptions happening at the moment. And so I think cogen and voice are the two big themes where it is working, like practically speaking, and we have the data on this. We know very clearly that it's working.
Yeah, okay. So the future's already here, just not evenly distributed, which I think
Yeah.
somebody famous once said. And in terms of the global economy, how do you see AI reshaping things there? Do you think we're going to see more wealth inequality, or are we going to narrow gaps in opportunity by more people having access to these tools?
I'm more optimistic. I feel like it's a democratizing tool because it's kind of like when Wikipedia first started to some extent, or the internet got started, it was very democratizing in disseminating information, and anyone with an internet access is able to learn whatever they want. So I don't have like a super sophisticated view on this. I haven't thought super deeply around what is truly going to happen. I would like that it's on the more democratic side where folks are able to get access to this, PhD level brain, as OpenAI calls it, for $100 a month or $200 a month. I think that's like pretty good value. Now
Pretty
you
good
can ask,
deal. Yeah.
hey, yeah, like it feels like a pretty good trade-off. Now it's like, hey, who can afford $100 a month, $200 a month? Like maybe you can't initially, but maybe you start off with the free versions of these tools and you're able to learn and upskill yourself and learn really quickly, and then produce value. Maybe start a company, maybe join a team, and yeah, and just keep sort of upskilling, up leveling yourself, and getting the latest tools to make yourself more effective. So I remain pretty optimistic. I might be naive, but that's my kind of viewpoint.
No, that's fine. I mean, all we're just looking for is kind of, opinions from kind of people in the space. So before we jump into Hamming, can you just give us a quick introduction to yourself, kind of interested in your journey from kind of Tesla to Citizen to startup land in the AI space?
Sure. I'm a trained data scientist. I was a senior staff DS at Tesla, built several data products while I was there, and worked closely with some of Elon's executives to make teams more efficient with data. That was the main ask, is make teams more efficient. It's pretty similar to some extent, the mandates that are the conversations that are happening at the C-suite level, which is make teams more efficient with AI. It's kind of the same thing, just 10 years back for me. And so I spent a lot of time building any kind of data product or data processes that we could optimize. And so we ended up driving kind of 8 million a week run rate for one of the initiatives, super high impact. There's other things I worked on that were not as good. But a lot of learnings. I think definitely learned quite a bit at my time there. The key learning for me was, how do you build systems that are reliable? And even prior to Tesla, I built simulation software for a power electronics company when I was an intern while I was attending Waterloo. And I was drawn to Citizen for its mission and its safety focus. And I think safety has been generally a core theme of my career. If you now look at what I'm doing at Hamming and what the team is doing, we did some pretty good work at Citizen. We were scraping police radio data, converting it into notifications that are safety oriented for folks who might be impacted, right? You're walking down the street and you get an alert, there's a fire 50 feet from you. Well, you should probably leave. If you didn't know that, if you didn't get the notification, you might not know.
Yeah.
That there's something going down, you might not even be able to even help if you don't have access to information. So again, a democratizing product, pretty popular. And the core learning was, how do you build, again, same theme around, how do you build things that are safe, reliable, that are not hallucinated? We fact checked as much as we could of the information we're providing to users. And so if you think about having, we make voice agents trustworthy. Similar stuff I have worked on my entire life. And so very, very obvious founder market fit and clear insights for what we should do next. I have very specific opinions. on
Okay.
where the space will sort of head towards.
And should we kind of kick things off if you kind of explain the kind of key problem that you're solving with Hamming, and who is it that's kind of feeling that pain most?
Mm-hmm. The core, so tying back to AGI, so AGI is almost here for voice, not quite. Voice agents are pretty awesome. They also break in very nonlinear ways that are non-human. There's all kinds of failure modes that are super non-human. You might have a prompt, you change one word or change one component, and all of a sudden the pipeline's not working. And the way teams, usually engineering teams, all the way from startups to public companies, we work across the stack. The way they solve them is they are calling their agents by hand, kind of manually, the engineering team or the product team or the QA team, to see, hey, is it still working? And it's sort of ironic that we're building this sort of AI, agentic voice-based agent, and the way you test it
testing
is
it in
by
a very
manual
human
calling.
way.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's the great irony. So that was the observation that we made. Our insight was, why not use voice agents to test other voice agents? That's sort of the funniest, like core insight that we discovered. And that's what we do. So we pretend to be, if you're building a medical voice agent, a receptionist style flow, we will call and pretend to be different personas, different age, different gender, accents. There's some background noise, some TV playing in the back. And we're trying to subject your agent to real world situations and package it behind a single click. So very much trying to simulate the world as far as a voice conversation goes, and make it really, really easy to run thousands of these calls in parallel and get results in minutes that would have taken hours, like tens of hours or hundreds of hours. So pretty obvious ROI. When
and
you
you can control all of those variables, can you, in terms of kind of what the conversation is going to be talking about, or like testing the agent in kind of different ways, and that's just through kind of prompting, or how do you control those variables?
It's prompting. Yeah, it's prompting. There's some presets we have that make it super easy. So most folks we work with, they're able to start running their tests in about 15 minutes. So we automatically can generate a lot of test cases and guardrails, which just makes the time to value super, super low. So it's kind of a no-brainer product, as far as we see.
Yeah, I think what does the kind of engineer get when they've kind of been through those like 1,000 calls, for example? Like, what are the kind of reports that they get at the end of that?
Yeah, we show you where the agent sucked. Here's where you most struggled. Sorted by impact. That's the report. And you take that report and then you synthesize it into actionable insights and kind of items, like linear items, engineering items for the team to go make some tweaks and rerun that same result over again and kind of check for improvements or regressions. That's the core thing.
And you use like an LLM as judge, is that right? For like the eval part? Yeah.
Yeah. There's more sophisticated, ways, but yes, LLM as a judge is the core, concept, but there's lots of ways that's not sufficient, and so we go beyond that on our side.
There's obviously a lot of people, talk about LLM as judges and, kind of criticize it, that you're kind of just pushing the kind of trust sort of one level up, so to speak. How are you kind of solving that problem?
Our LLM as a judge tend to be calibrated, and they actually get better over time based on some user feedback. So if there are domain experts who can annotate or can help provide, corrections, let's call it, to the standard LLM as a judge, we actually can calibrate our stuff pretty quickly. And I think it just comes down to a trade-off between trust, speed, and cost. You can definitely have humans review all the outputs, but it's super slow, and you will have inconsistencies even with humans that are doing the grading process. If you have two teachers grading the same paper, you might not get the same grade at the end of the day, right? That's not a given. And I think the beauty here is, yes, maybe LLM as a judge may not capture all the nuance you're looking for, but it's simply a one prompt away or one override away from our standpoint. So we see much more consistent results with our approach than if a human is sort of going down the list and labeling by hand. It's super cumbersome.
Yeah, okay. And how do you see voice agents, differing from other types of agents? Like what are the kind of unique challenges that your customers face that maybe other eval tools, don't help them with?
Voice is very human. It is a universal API that we communicate with. And so when voice agents mess up, it's very obvious. It's very annoying. And it kind of shatters the Turing test illusion that is often something you can pass, with voice agents these days. So I think voice agents differ quite significantly with other kinds of agents that can be more resilient to failures. The latency requirements are pretty extreme for a conversation to feel natural. So voice agents, to me, represent one of the hardest types of agents in getting it to be dialed in, getting it to perform really well. Super hard.
And are we kind of, much more attuned to the kind of failures in voice agents because it's something that's so kind of evolved in us, for want of a better word?
Yeah, we're very intuitive in how natural this sounds or how we feel about a conversation. And so it is generally a much harder problem. I think it's different from these general purpose agents that are making tools and doing stuff. Like, yeah, those are great, and if they fail, you like press a button, reset them. But there's definitely a more visceral disappointment when these voice agents fail. If you're ordering a burger that's vegan and then you don't get a vegan burger through a drive-through, because of bugs or because the team didn't test these agents well enough, you're pretty disappointed. And these can be pretty catastrophic in a healthcare setting, in a legal tech setting, in a drive-through setting, QSR, and so on. So voice is hard and voice is fun.
Yeah, and obviously, there's a lot talked about, the MIT report recently talking about like 95% of kind of AI use cases kind of failing in enterprise companies. From your perspective in the kind of voice agent world, does that 95% figure hold true, or do you see, kind of a different picture there?
Yeah, I feel like that is a skill issue or it's a prioritization issue. For voice agents, I feel like majority of these agents can be made reliable. It's a last mile issue, just like self-driving, where it's easy to kind of build a demo very quickly. That's 60, 70%. And the last mile requires more discipline and maybe working with like a testing platform like Hamming. But we're able to make most agents reliable. That number seems inverted. I would say maybe like 5% of voice agents are just too hard to do, and no amount of testing would work, but the 95 should work because we've seen so much success of having worked with folks pre-deployment, finding issues, helping the teams iterate, and then finally launching to production. And we see the numbers kind of grow 20% month over month, 30% month over month. So I think that number is true for perhaps general AI pilots and initiatives, but it's not true for voice. And it's definitely not true for teams that are equipping themselves with toolings to help them iterate faster. That's my like take. It's a skill issue to me, or like a tooling issue. They're not working with the right people.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of like the products with Hamming, I mean, how has it kind of evolved since you first had that idea, like that vision? What did you learn from early feedback from users, which is kind of integrated into the product?
For sure, we learn every day, and we ship every day. I think we have more ideas than we have capacity to execute on them at any moment in time. And so if you look at our eng, performance, I think we rank top 5 on this engineering benchmark called Weave, and we'd love to shipping. So we're always constantly shipping. So there's no, I would say, some unicorn insight that I can give to you. The core thesis has remained constant since we got started, and since we invented basically the space of testing voice agents. The difference is maybe there are, maybe the TAM is much bigger than even what I thought it would be. So I think that's surprising, is how many voice agents are being built. And even I underestimated the size of the market and how fast it would actually end up growing. So my learning is we love working with customers, and we learn something new every day. And I mean, I can give you like a full list if you really wanted to kind of poke there. But we're very self-critical, and what we feel like what we have is good, but it can still be much, much, much better. And so that's what drives us every day, is there clearly exists even a better product than what we have, and we're trying to sort of reach for the stars is what we're trying to do every single day, trying to kind of like hit a home run. Yeah, exactly. That's how we operate. We're very introverted as a team.
And obviously you're kind of building in a market which is kind of shifting on a weekly basis in terms of kind of new models, like new advances being made. Like how do you make that decision of which trends to bet on? And I guess even more importantly, maybe like which ones are you not going to bet on and kind of specifically kind of not adopt into the product?
Yeah, we're very we would not be an eval company if we were not evaling new models. So every time there's new model releases, our team is testing and measuring how good is it for us to use and for us to recommend to our partners and customers. So we're very quantitative and very much experimentalists and very, I guess, like very pragmatic in how we operate and how we think around new things. So we don't believe or disbelieve trends. I think everything is a hypothesis, and we're very scientific in trying a new model out or trying a new workflow or a product out and asking ourselves the question, okay, how does it score on a rubric? So we're always evaling on our side.
So you kind of have a specific set of criteria which you benchmark everything against, and if it kind of meets certain kind of criteria, then it gets in the product, and if it doesn't, you kind of ignore it. Okay,
that's right. And we're very quantitative on the back end.
When you're kind of talking to, I guess, quite a wide range of different types of customers, like what's the kind of biggest mistake that you see people making in agent frameworks and orchestration?
I think maybe the biggest mistake ends up being folks are 2 weeks away from launch or a week away from launch, and they reach out to us in a panic to make sure that the agents are working. So that would be maybe like a type of mistake where you compress your timelines so short, where suppose we run a set of tests, we find some kind of staggering issues. I mean, then you're sort of pretty squeezed. You feel pretty short squeezed. So involving the testing loop and making it automated would be best if it's brought earlier in the life cycle. So maybe that's the biggest mistake is, people feel like it's fine if I just call these agents, it's fine, it's working, but you'd be much better off if you actually, instead of you calling, you had 1,000 people on behalf of you who are calling and giving you those insights earlier. That would be the alpha.
And
that's one of the best teams too.
In terms of kind of the agent space, I guess we're still sort of very early in that kind of journey, really. Do you think we're kind of head towards more platform consolidation, or do you think we're going to have like fragmented tools doing different jobs in different parts of the company?
It's a great question. I'm not totally sure where things will end up being. I think there's always going to be space for differentiated experiences that are independent companies. And I think the platform will just become more powerful over time. So the floor will continue to increase, but the human demand for incredibly exciting, let's say, workflows on the consumer side or super, super efficient workflows on the business side will always be there. And so I think the fragmentation will always exist. I don't think like one platform or a couple platforms will sort of rule them all. I have a hard time seeing that. So if someone has an app store, like Uber is still going to exist.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just inevitable. It's too hard. It's too hard to win every market. You can't fight like infinite wars.
And obviously each one like has kind of very unique challenges. So it's difficult to kind of bridge those all unless, someone goes on like some mega acquisition spree, which I guess may well happen at some point. So, and in terms of kind of building like a startup in the AI space, any startup kind of brings a huge amount of challenges. Like, what was the biggest surprise that you found over the first kind of year or two of starting Hammy?
I think the biggest surprise was how hard it would be and how many ways you can fail. So I think I think Elon has this saying, starting a company is like chewing glass and staring into abyss. And I think
Yeah.
that's basically right. I think that's basically right. Most days you have no idea if what you're doing is the right thing, but you just go based on your instincts and you do the right thing every single day and you show up. And so winning is simply just showing up and not dying. And then eventually you might find a core insight like we did. Um, so it's much more difficult. This journey is much more crazy than I thought it would be. That was surprising to me. I thought it'd be hard. I didn't know how hard.
Yeah, I guess everybody tells you it's hard, but then you get in and you're like, oh, it's even harder than I expected. Yeah. And in
That's right.
terms of kind of go to market and kind of getting, the name of Hamming out there, the AI tool space is so noisy, like there are so many startups. I think a lot of engineers are kind of overwhelmed, like with the number of different tools kind of available to them. Like, how do you get your voice heard?
Yeah. Um, to be honest, most people generally know that because we started first, we have the most insights around what people need and how to actually build a great product. And so we end up winning majority of the deals. Generally speaking, we win majority of the deals, and all of these come inbound. So we do very little outbound on our side. It's driven by word of mouth, and I think if we do great work with our customers, then they will basically tell other people about us. At some point, this stops scaling, but for now, it continues to work. So we're mostly inbound driven at the moment. We do a little bit of outbound here and there when we find a compelling reason to partner on a use case or an organization, but folks simply just know, they just seem to know who's legit. And they just book some time with me and we just chat and figure out, are we a good partner for them? So we're very inbound driven, very introverted, very engineering driven, and our thesis is the best product actually wins initially,
Mhm.
and then at some point the best messaging will win. But messaging without product is basically useless in our view, because those customers will churn and will come to us anyway, which happens a lot. Sometimes people buy the message and the product sucks, and they come
Yeah.
work with us and the
Okay.
product's good, and they're like, okay, this makes sense. This is why Hamming is best.
This is what
So
we're looking for. Yeah.
we're very substance oriented. Build the best product and build it in a way that is differentiated. And I think everything else is a sort of side hustle around this being the hardest, the most important thing. That's our core belief.
And you mentioned that point of scaling there. I guess that's one of the biggest challenges for any startup is kind of moving from the kind of founder-led sales, where you're the best salesperson in the company, and then kind of scaling a business and having that repeatable kind of playbook. Like, how do you think about that?
Um, I think about it. I don't have any tricks. I don't have any hacks that um, solve for this massive change of doing founder-led sales and people hearing from the source to having somebody else represent the brand. I think 0 to 1 or kind of like 0.5 to 1, let's call it, growth is super brutal. I'm still figuring it out. I do think attitude and sort of hunger and learning rate really matters, in my opinion, more than experience for the first few GTM folks who want to help scale, your brand out. So my hypothesis is to simply work with people who are just like us, who embody the Hamming kind of culture and philosophy of being substance driven. And that's how we scale up the GTM team kind of beyond just myself. So that's a hypothesis. I think once I'm on the other side, I'll let you know how it's going.
Yeah.
But it's a work in
Okay.
progress and we're learning every day.
And in terms of your experience over the last kind of year or two, like what's harder, building a product or building a company?
I think initially all of the value is in the product. Um, at some point, building a company becomes very important. I think there are different set of challenges. The hardest part I would say about being a CEO is my job changes every week or every 2 weeks. It's a totally different
Hmm.
job and totally
Or every
different set of
couple of
skill sets.
hours, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, even a few hours have to like totally change the thing I'm doing. Um, it's hard to say what is harder. I think they're both hard. Maybe building a company is more difficult than the product, because you have to align incentives, you have to get people in the same, rowing the same direction. And LLMs are a lot easier to instruct than humans from a product building standpoint. So I think people are much more complex than sort of the product piece, but they're both hard.
And how do you think about kind of velocity and momentum versus kind of polish, if you like, in terms of the products, but also how you're kind of representing yourself to customers? You know, there's trade-offs obviously that need to happen there. Which one do you think is more important?
I think they're both important. So as an eval company, if we are regressing, which sometimes we do, we try not to. If we are regressing, then people lose trust in the testing product. Like the testing product has to be an oracle. It has to be a truth teller, which means it has to be flawless, generally speaking. I think both matter. We have built the company and the product in a way where we can move very quickly and minimize the rough edges, still working on sanding down the rough edges, but they both matter a lot. In 2025, you cannot do one or the other. You will fail. If you're just pure velocity and it's like impossible to use and it's pure stability, but nothing's being shipped, you'll basically lose. So you actually have to do both. So I don't think it's either or. I think you have to do both and find the right curve that is correct for your team.
I suppose that's another one of those kind of CEO switches that you need to make, is like spinning the different plates at the same time, and you know, making sure you've got that balance in both. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Sumanyu. If people want to get in touch, what's the best way to reach you? Are you more on LinkedIn or X or email? Where do you live most of the time?
You can email me at sumanyu@hamming.ai. So if you Google Hamming AI, you'll find the URL, just my first name at hamming.ai. Just email me. If you want to work with me, work with the team, see what it's all about, you can email me. You can also find us on LinkedIn. We do a lot of interesting product breakdowns. So we did a jailbreak for Grok. They have a voice agent, Ani, and we jailbroke it to commit crimes against humanity. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can also find us on LinkedIn. I also post on Twitter as well. But yeah, email and LinkedIn are probably the best.
Okay, cool. I literally saw just a few minutes before we did this call, actually, Grok just got like $750 million kind of new funding. So going well.
That sounds great. Hopefully they do some more red teaming and safety training on their side.
No, good stuff. Well, I appreciate your time, Sumanyu, and thank you to everybody watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.